Hey there, guys, and welcome back to the Pillar Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Damien Fitzpatrick, CEO and founder of Pillar Performance. This podcast, we sit down with the leaders in their field of research and high performance, as well as some of the teams and the creators of these companies that exist within the field of endurance sports, nutrition, and fitness. At Pillar, we are on a mission to get athletes to the start line in their best possible condition. We enable that by developing clinical micronutrition products across sleep, recovery, inflammation, energy, and immunity. We hope this podcast hopefully helps in that process as well. On this week's episode, we have a great one, very mouth-watering discussion with our Pillar Head of Nutrition, Pip Taylor, and Lucas Becker, also known as the Byron Bay Chef here in Australia. This is a great discussion as Lucas dives deep into his practical tips for athletes and particularly beginners in the kitchen, as well as getting organised, keeping it simple, and using some really versatile cooking methods in your meal prep. He really highlights the benefits of batch cooking and meal preparation for athletes to save both time and money, which right now is very important for everyone. Lucas really encourages athletes to prioritise cooking their own meals to fuel their performance and obviously avoid the cost and, importantly, the temptation of eating out. He shares a lot of these recipes on Instagram, and I highly suggest a lot of you check them out. There is some delicious dishes on there. Hope you enjoy the discussion.
So welcome, Lucas. I'm here with Lucas Becker, also known as Byron Bay Chef. Lucas, I've known you for a couple of years. You're one of my favourite chefs. You're probably one of the region's most loved chefs and most sought after chefs as well. But we've also worked together with athletes and really breaking down cooking skills into really the foundational basics, which is what I love about what you do. But you have a really interesting background. Born in Brazil, you live now here in Australia. You yourself are very sporty as well. Can you give us a little bit more about your background and where your love of cooking, but also healthy, fresh cooking and food comes from?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Pip. It's a pleasure to talk to you again. So the way my passion for eating healthier started is a few years ago when I already moved into Australia. I was very young. I was having fun. I was partying. I started to notice that I was already a chef and I knew how to cook, but I was wasting a lot of money on crap food. I wasn't keeping fit. It was very hard to get organized with my meals even. And I was a chef. I knew how to cook. And then I started to work in a place in Sydney called The Healthy Chef. And I started to notice that by using a few different ingredients, changing the way I could do things, I could start to eat healthier, improve my lifestyle, and just hit my health goals. I am not a professional athlete. I'm far from being that, but I try to focus on my health as much as possible. I surf regularly. I have been practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 11 years now. And I consider myself a very active person. I try to eat healthier as much as I can, look at the things that I eat, but I'm not extreme. I like to be healthy, but also not being extreme and not trying to tell people to be extreme, because I think that when we try to be extreme on anything in life, we tend to fail sometimes, and it's hard to keep at 110% all the time. So I much rather be on the 20%, 80-20 rule for my lifestyle.
I think you make a really good point. It's something that, and I often find, and I work with a lot of endurance athletes, and they're really, really diligent. They're really diligent at getting in their training. They're really diligent at recovery. They pay attention to their nutrition, but sometimes they can actually take it to that extreme level. And one of the things that I'm constantly trying to remind people of and help people with is that food is also meant to be fun. And I think that that's something that you bring in really nicely, is that reminder that food is fun. It's meant to be enjoyed. It's a social experience as much as it is about fueling us and getting in optimal nutrients and fueling for both health as well as performance.
Yes, I agree. Like I totally agree. I feel like sometimes, and I see a lot of with some of the families that I work with, or some of the people that I coach on how to cook more from home, how to be more efficient, how to be more organized. There's a lot of information on the internet these days, and a lot of people are very how can I say, like very, very extreme on the way they think. And they think that a lot of times people think that one size fits all, and everyone is different. And when I see that people end up sleeping and doing a mistake is when they try to follow something very extremely and trying to like do everything perfectly, when life sometimes is not perfect. And even with my training, like I noticed like the other day, okay, now I had a break from jiu-jitsu and I'm 5 weeks back. I'm training a lot. I'm not gonna miss any training now. And then last week I injured my shoulder, and I was like, oh my God, what I'm gonna do now? I'm just gonna keep going, and because I don't want to stop now, because I was trying to go for that extreme of training all the time, and I couldn't do it anymore, and it started to hurt more. So I had to go into the osteopath, into the chiropractor, and spend a bit of money on that, because I was not looking after myself. I was trying to push for something that it's not realistic, like on daily life. And I think with cooking is the same. Like if we try to just have that perfect diet, we're going to create another problem, which is going to be a mental problem of, if we are not doing 100% right, we start to blame ourselves. We think we're failing. And then it's like a snowball. We start to go downhill. And I see a lot of people trying to do that when they could just be more flexible and more consistent with the way they cook, the way they eat, and not try to get the results straight away, but more on the long term, which I think it's the good approach to do.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that you do so well, Lucas, aside from bringing that fun and enjoyment, which is also really obvious, by the way, if you watch any of your videos, and you're pretty consistent and prolific on social media, and putting out really good short tips and bringing that fun into the kitchen. But one of the things that I think that I find often with athletes of all ages, not even just younger adults who are learning to cook, is that there is a bit of a fear of stepping into the kitchen. So there's that fear of just getting started. Where would you start with someone who is a bit of a beginner in the kitchen? They're a bit more timid about learning the skills. What are the basics to start? And would you say there are a couple of dishes or things to learn to cook that once you master them, you've got a really solid foundation that you can pretty much cook anything, or you can at least feed yourself and feed your family healthily and quickly?
Sure. Yeah, I think like what I would suggest for anyone like who want to start to cook more from home, start to eat healthier, and athletes or just random people that just want to have an active lifestyle or eat healthier, is to first get organized. Having everything at home, like maybe buy a veggie box or write a shopping list of your things that you want to buy, and stick to that list, because a lot of times we go to the supermarket, we don't have a list, and then we just start to grab things out of the shelves and start to look for specials, and then everything on special, and then we see something that, okay, this looks beautiful, it's on special, but I don't even know what to do with this. And then we end up with a lot of things in our fridge. And I think just keeping it simple, because to eat healthier, and to cook more from home, you want to keep simple. A lot of times people want to follow recipes and read recipes, and recipes are a great guide, but a lot of times if someone doesn't have an ingredient at home, they're going to stop everything, run to the shops to get that one ingredient. And that's going to slow them down. It's going to make them lose their motivation. We can change things, we can adapt things, and we don't need all the ingredients on a recipe. I think like if you're cooking from home, there are a few cooking methods that if you know how to do 1, 2, maybe 3, which I would say would be either roasting would be one of them, grilling a steak or a fish, or pan frying a piece of protein. And then the third one would be steaming or blanching, which is basically cooking your veggies on hot water, which is a great way of cooking because it doesn't need any oil. It preserves the nutrients as well on that ingredient, and it will last long if you just blanch a piece of broccoli, a few green beans, maybe some snow peas, have all those things always in your fridge, and then you roast some carbs, maybe some sweet potato, pumpkin, beetroot, or just white potatoes, have that in your fridge as well, have a few leaves, and then you already have a base for so many things in there that all you have to do is put together, cook your protein source, and then you're done. If you have everything there, it will take 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, 25 at the most. And a lot of people think that sometimes eating takeaway, it's cheaper and quicker. But by the time you go and order your takeaway, pick it up or get it delivered, pay for it, it's not just more expensive, but it will take a lot more of your time. And you're not going to do anything with your time when you're waiting for your food to arrive. You're probably going to waste that time. Most of the times you're going to be browsing on your phone. You're going to be looking out of the window. It's very unlikely someone will be very productive because they're already waiting for the food there. They're just thinking of the food. They don't want to focus on anything else at that time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the biggest keys is that it's not, once you have some of those basic skills, and I often just say to people, if you cannot cook a thing or you think you can't cook a thing, start with eggs.
Yes.
Eggs to me are this, you can have them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're not going to want to have them all in the one day for those meals, but they're one of the most versatile foods to learn how to cook. If you can learn how to roast, as you say, and steam, you can pretty much make anything and you can eat healthily. But one of the keys is it's not the actual cooking that takes time, it's the having the foods in your fridge and in your cupboard is the key. Because if they're there, as you say, first of all, if you're anything like me, and I know we both actually get a veggie box delivered, and it's one of my biggest time-saving tricks, but also one of the ways that I ensure that we all in this family eat lots of healthy fruit and veggies, because I don't like anything to go to waste. I don't like to see anything that's rotting or wilting in the back of my cupboard, or back of my fridge. So it all gets used. And that's I've used that with lots of clients over the years as a way to make sure that they are getting veggies, because they're there, they're going to eat them. What else would you say is key to have either in your fridge or in your pantry, so that because lots of our audience they're endurance athletes, so they are spending a lot of time training, but a lot of them also work full time, they're looking after family. What would you have in your pantry and in your fridge so that if you're walking in the door, you know that within that 15, 20 minutes, you can get dinner on the table quickly?
Yes, I would definitely have a good variety of veggies because they are very quick to cook. Like you mentioned, having a veggie box that you order online, or maybe some people don't have the option to order a veggie box. They can have a list of their favorite veggies and just order online on Woolies or Coles or one of the supermarkets as well. Everyone's doing deliveries these days because, like you said, it's not the cooking that takes the time, it's the getting organized, it's going to the shops. Some people live next door to the shops, but some people have to travel 15 minutes. And then when you're there, you get distracted as well. Got to go through the cashier to pay for it. So you spend a lot of time. So I would have the veggies always in my fridge. I would also have protein options, not just in the fridge, but maybe have something in the freezer as well. I always like to have on my freezer a little bit of chicken thigh and beef mince. It's something I always have that if we get stuck, because then I know, okay, today I'm not going to go to the shops, but I do have that chicken in there, or that beef mince, or anything in the freezer that I can pull it out in the morning and cook at night. I also like to always have, if the person is having grains, if they okay to have grains, have either rice or quinoa or buckwheat on my pantry as well, because it's something that it can add some protein. It's gonna like the quinoa, for example, but it also gonna give you more. It's gonna make you more filled with those grains as well. So I like to have those in there. But I think one key thing to save the time is not just having the things in the fridge, but have them ready to go in the fridge. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times people will go shopping, they'll come back and they just stick the bag straight in the fridge, or sometimes not even in a bag, just your broccoli or your leaves, everything open in the fridge. And what I like to do, and what I try to teach people to do, is to wash everything when you get home. So dry everything properly and put it away on an airtight container. This way, your veg is going to be ready to go. Because if you have to cook something and you still got to wash everything before you start to cook, you're wasting more time in there. And I would also suggest that people find ways of storing those veggies so they last longer in the fridge. Because like you said, like, it's horrible to buy things and they'll go to waste, and it happens often. And usually happens, the way it happens is, let's say we have some lettuce or zucchini or something sitting on the back of the fridge, and you go to use that, it's not washed. So like, oh, I'm gonna do it tomorrow. And then you see, oh, that's starting to get a bit sad, that bit of lettuce. And you leave it for the next day, and then you leave for the next day, and then when you see, it's gone. And there was pretty much half meal in there. So I would highly recommend people to have their veggies in there, have an option for protein. Like you said, eggs, for me, is one of the things that I eat the most. Every morning I eat between 3 and 6 eggs. Sometimes if I'm not eating eggs in the morning, I'll have oats and yogurt and fruit, and then I'll have my eggs at lunchtime. But I pretty much eat eggs every day because it's so easy to cook. It's super simple.
So easy.
You use one pan. It doesn't make a mess. A lot of times, if you are cooking things like chicken or beef on a frying pan, you make a mess everywhere. With the eggs, you don't make a mess. It's super clean, super easy to cook, and you're done. And it's cheap as well. Like me, for example, Camila and I, we buy the eggs by the 100. We always buy a whole box with 180 eggs, and then we split the box with Pedro and Martina, and then we have 90 eggs each, and we just keep repeating that. We always buy at 100.
You need a chicken farm, Lucas. Lost you for a second.
Yes, you're back now.
Back. So one of the questions I was going to ask you, Lucas, you're obviously a trained chef. You've worked in some top restaurants, and you also do private catering at some really exclusive retreats and health and wellness retreats. But at home, and also you have a new cooking course called Kitchen Hero, where you teach other people cooking skills and the basics. What I love about this course, and also how you eat at home, is that it's people's perception is that you're a chef. You must always be eating chefy foods at home. You know, your dinners and your lunches must be hours and hours spent in the kitchen. But that's not how you eat, and it's also not how you teach others. You do teach them these real fundamental basics, like you said, about storing and washing and prepping your vegetables, that make that practical difference. It's one of the things that I find when I'm working with endurance athletes, is that any time saving or any way that they can save time in the kitchen is really key to getting them to eat well. So I can sit down with them and help them build all of this knowledge around nutrition. But if they can't actually apply that in the kitchen, then they're really falling through the gaps. And that's where, you know, your knowledge and skills comes in and is so, so critical. What's one of the things that you find, one of the biggest challenges that you work with people that you see when they're coming in to learn how to cook or to learn how to save time? It's the biggest question or challenge.
Yes. I think one of the biggest challenge that people say is time. That's the number one challenge. They all too busy with work, with their families, but it all comes back to getting organized and having a system in place, like knowing like what works for you as well, because what works for me might not work for you, might not work for Jared, might not work for someone else. And I think you first need to decide what's best for you. Do you want to cook daily, quick meals daily, or do you want to have them all ready for 3 days or for 5 days? Sometimes people live by themselves, they live with family. Some people rather eat meals freshly. Some people don't mind freezing a cup of meals to have it for later. I think it comes down to breaking down first, okay, are you going to cook every day, twice a week, once a week? And then once you do that, decide like which meals are the ones that you want to eat, things that you enjoy eating, and then make a list of those meals. Once you have a list of those meals, yes, go ahead.
I have a question and I get asked this all the time as well. When we're always looking for shortcuts, and there are shortcuts that you can take in the kitchen, and there are shortcuts that you can do when it comes to food and to meal prep. Usually you'll pay for the shortcut in some way, whether that's through taste or it being not as good quality ingredients, or whether that's literally in cost. But something that I've used with athletes, and particularly when athletes are traveling and they might not be in their familiar kitchen, or they might just simply not have the time, they're gone to a race, but buying pre-cut vegetables, buying frozen vegetables, there's nothing wrong with using them, right? Can you reassure us on that?
Yeah, look, you definitely can use them. That's totally fine. But it also comes down to if the person, like for example, Camila and I, we have a very small freezer, so we need to be very mindful of what we're gonna have in the freezer as well. And with the veggies, like they're so quick to cut as well. Like it's super quick, super easy. But I think yes, it is definitely an option to have the ones that are pre-cut already. But then, like you said, they come at a cost. It's much more expensive to buy the veggies that are already pre-cut, when you could maybe buy a sweet potato and cut it for the week, have it ready in your fridge, or maybe not even that, just cut, roast enough for 3 days, and then you have that already in there. But yes, when you are traveling, it's much more challenging. But I actually I did challenge myself last year when Camila and I went away for 3 months, and we stayed in different Airbnbs, but all very simple places, like one small bedroom studios with very small kitchens, minimal equipment in there. And I still managed to cook meals daily for us, for breakfast, lunch, dinner, making sandwiches to take away on our hikes. So I was always able to do the things, even though I had even small space on the fridge as well. I just needed to get organized. But yes, like using the frozen vegetables that are ready to go will be an option. Sometimes getting the chopped vegetables from the supermarket will be an option, but I feel that depending how fresh they are, they might not last as long in your fridge. So you need to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah, that's true. I guess sometimes we're working with a bit of compromise too. And sometimes those sorts of products can provide the stepping stone to people. So they can go from not cooking at all to utilizing some of these products, and it can be a stepping stone to actually starting to enjoy their time in the kitchen, to starting to learn more about it. So I know, for instance, that I will have, if I have an athlete come in and they are really timid about being in the kitchen, or they absolutely like flat out, no, I don't have any time. That using things like, you might hate this, Lucas, but pre-cooked rice packets, or
Yeah.
Pre-mixed spice mixes or curry paste they're already made for you. They can really make that bridge into cooking so much easier for a lot of people. And I think that's where that, just time spent in the kitchen can start to grow. One of the other things that is really important is your kitchen equipment, right? There's nothing more frustrating, and you would see this as a chef, but this is for any home cook. There's nothing more frustrating or even dangerous than using a blunt knife, for instance. But there's also not having equipment is also not a barrier to being in the kitchen. There's only a handful of things that you need, right, to get started in the kitchen. Which would include a knife and a chopping board and a saucepan, a fry pan. What would you say if you had to set up a kitchen from scratch, minimal money, minimal equipment? What are the must-haves?
Look, if I had to set up a kitchen from scratch and I had very little money, all what I would focus on is buying a very good knife. I would invest most of my money on a good knife. I would buy a big chopping board, because a big chopping board allows you to prepare everything. All your veggies have everything in the chopping board already, gives you space. You don't make a mess as well, because the mess is where people lose their motivation as well. If you have a small chopping board and you cutting your vegetables, they keep going everywhere, you're making a mess all the time, you get frustrated. So I would have a good knife, a small chopping board, a nice baking dish, and a pot and a pan. That's like pretty much all you need. That's what I like. Of course, you can have a lot more, and my kitchen is full of equipment. But when I was traveling, that's what I actually took with me on the travels. I took my knife, my sharpening steel. I also took a peeler, because I wanted to use to peel the veggies. And I had, what was the other one? I had one more item that I hardly used. So those were the three main items that I used through the whole time. And of course, you can use other bits and pieces that will make your life easier. But I see a lot of times people buy a very expensive knife block, because have all these different knives that will do all these different things. But in the end of the day, all you need is a sharp blade. And even to peel vegetables, you can peel your vegetables with the knife somehow if you know how to do it. So it's not a must to have all these different knives and invest on expensive pieces of equipment, and it ends up being a lot of money that you ditch to go on those equipments.
Yeah, it really is a matter of just getting in there. One other piece of equipment that I love and that I probably recommend to lots of people as well that are very short on time is a slow cooker. Because while it may sound counterintuitive, because it takes 6, 8, 10 hours to cook, but I am often finding I'm cooking our dinner while I'm making the school lunches in the morning. And 5 minutes of almost throwing things in the pot. Again, they're all there in the fridge, in the pantry, throwing them into the pot. And for me, that's the fastest way of getting a really good dinner cooked. So you can kind of either be cooking quickly in that 10, 15 minute period of time, or you can be cooking slow, and they're both equally quick and time efficient.
Yes, for sure. And the slow cooking is something that you not even have to worry about. You spend maybe 5-10 minutes to get in your meat in there, or your veggies, whatever it is, and then that you're done. And I do a lot of that at home. I don't have a slow cooker, but I tend to do that in my oven as well, which works in a similar way. And what usually I do is, when I do that, I like to batch cooking. And usually I do my proteins in there. So I like to do either a brisket or a lamb shoulder. And it literally takes me 10 minutes to prepare. I stick it in the oven, or you can use a slow cooker or an instant pot, whatever equipment people have at home. But in my case, I chuck it in the oven. I put it at a very low temperature, 110, before I go to bed. And 8 hours later, when I wake up, I just pull it out and it's ready. And I like to say that this is how you cook when you're sleeping, because you don't have to worry. You have a very nice piece of protein that is going to last you for a few days. You'll last like 3, 4, 5 days in the fridge. You can freeze some if you like. And I guess for the athletes, it's one of the best ways to cook, I would say, because it's an easy way to cook their proteins without making a mess as well. Like we said before, like if you're gonna cook a steak on the stove, you have oil going everywhere. If you cook your steak on the barbecue, you also have to clean the barbecue. But if you do it in the oven or on the slow cooker, there is no mess. It's super easy.
Yep. So no cleanup. You can do it in bigger quantities. You can freeze them. You can have leftovers for lunch the next day. But they're also almost impossible to stuff up, right? So
yes.
even for the most absolute beginner cook, it's really hard to mess a slow cooking dish up.
Yes.
So for me, they're always one of those. Learn how to do that really quickly when you're starting off in the kitchen.
Yes. And I think like one thing I also like to suggest to people is when they're cooking, try to use the same, diversify the cooking methods as well, and have the same ingredients on different dishes. So you have a variety, it doesn't get boring, and you also can be more quick as well, because if you're doing everything on the frying pan, you're gonna take a lot longer to cook everything in one equipment. But if you have the slow cooker going, you have some things in the oven, you have a frying pan, and you have a pot with water at the back where you're constantly steaming, you can make a lot of food in less than 1 hour for your week, and then you're done. You don't have to worry about anything else. It's gonna be costing you between, I don't know, $6, $7, $10, maybe $12 per meal if you're using like expensive proteins in there, and you don't have to do any more work later. It only takes a few minutes to heat it up.
That's it. And the pack and go leftovers, which is the other thing that I always say, particularly to athletes, is never cook for just one meal. Always cook more than what you need, so you've got leftovers, so that you're in the morning, you're coming home from, you've done a morning training session, you're coming home, you're packing to go to work, you can throw the leftovers in and off you go. What about grab and go breakfast, Lucas? Do you have any quick ideas for things that people can prep ahead, open up the fridge and be eating either on their way to training or packing in and eating after training?
Yes, like some of my favorites pack and go breakfast is chia pudding. It's one of my number one favorites. I like it because it's super easy. It takes 5 minutes to make. You can diversify on flavor as well. You can do chocolate, berries, vanilla. You can do like a golden milk, like with turmeric and a few spices in there. So many varieties, and it can even work as a cheap dessert as well, because it's nice and light and sweet. You can have instead of having a processed chocolate, I would say. I also like to do the Bircher muesli, and those are all things that I never make just for one morning. I always, when I take my time to make a chia pudding or a Bircher, I'm gonna make enough to have it for 3 days, because then I don't have to worry about it anymore. I'm only washing once, I'm only preparing once, and all it takes, it's a scoop later, add some fruits in there, granola, few nuts and seeds, whatever people want to add to it. And another one that I do like for grab and go, works well with lunch boxes, is making some sort of energy balls, or like protein bars at home, or however you want to call them. But it's basically just almond meal, dates, and other ingredients that you want to add in there. Like some people add their protein powder or superfoods, hemp seeds, whatever it is. It's so easy to make. It lasts for days in the fridge. And again, you do it once for 4 or 5 days, and then it's done. And it's so much cheaper than buying a protein bar. I'm sure like with a lot of the products from Pillar, for example, you could add a lot of them into the recipes, into the energy balls, and then you're ready for the week. Instead of going to the supermarket and paying $5, $6, $7 for an energy bar, you're gonna have them at $1.30, $1.50. I still remember the costs we used to have at Grillo with the bars, and I was shocked how much it costs to produce an energy bar and how much they are retailing. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really important to know too, is that after you make these sort of energy bars once or twice, and they make such great training food as well. They're nutrient dense, they're high energy. But once you make them once or twice and you realize that they are pretty easy to make, again, it's just having the ingredients on hand. But it also makes you much more aware, and this holds not just for energy or protein bars, but food in general, or even when you're eating out. If you have some idea of how something is cooked or made, it makes you much more aware of the quality of things that you're buying. And you start to read some of the ingredients and you think, well, that's not an ingredient that I would have in my kitchen or that I would use to cook. And having that awareness and that knowledge just overall improves your nutrition and your approach to nutrition. So I always find, I must admit, that I think athletes would struggle, or athletes cannot be performing at their absolute best if they don't have at least a foundational understanding of food, and how to cook and prepare their own food in the kitchen. So as I said before, I can sit and help build their knowledge around nutrition and the timing of what to eat and when to eat it. But if they can't apply that in the kitchen, then they're really missing out on some of those health and performance benefits. And that's where your recipes, your knowledge, your skills really come in. I know that you have your course, Kitchen Hero, which takes people through all of those foundations and helps to build confidence in the kitchen. But you also share a lot of your recipes and tips as well, don't you, on your Instagram? Where else can people find more of your recipes and more of your help and advice?
Okay, I think like a lot of the recipes that I post, all of them on Instagram, I share them on my social media. I have never been a chef that wants to hide the recipes or have a secret recipe, because nothing is a secret anymore. It's all on Google. I find it funny when some chefs say that they have a secret recipe or the best recipe in the world, because they're all pretty similar and so available these days. It's so easy to get them. I also share in there, like I always like to say to people, like not to be stuck with the recipes, but understand the concepts and how to prepare the things more than anything, like the processes that you need to know, the cooking methods, the storage as well, how to store and avoid waste, because a big part of it's avoiding the waste as well, because in the end of the day, waste is money going into the bin. A lot of that I share on my social media, I guess. Instagram will be the place to find it. Also on the Kitchen Hero program, which is my 4-week program that I run 4 to 5 times a year. It's usually like a 4-week program where I'll take people on a journey from the very basics, changing their mindset around cooking, understanding that it's not something that only a few people can do it. Anyone should be doing, and it should be part of our daily life, not just for our health, but these days has a lot to do with saving as well. The cost of living, it's so expensive, and if we can improve our lifestyle, we can save some money, and also we can have more free time, because a lot of times people think that cooking takes too long, and it's just because they don't know how to do it, or because they don't know how to get organized. Once they are organized, once they learn the very basics, anyone can cook. I've seen people from all ages coming into the Kitchen Hero program, like from 25, 28 years old. I had one lady who was 72 years old, and she was cooking her whole life, but she noticed that she could be doing things differently, getting organized, saving money, saving time, and eat better as well. And I think like with the athletes, especially, athletes are so disciplined. Like I think to be a successful athlete, and correct me if I'm wrong, but discipline is at the top of your priorities. You need to have the discipline to exercise, to follow with what your coaches are doing. And I feel that eating well, it's more than ever proved that should be a priority as well to perform better. And not just that, but also to save money, because the athletes also have bills to pay. So why would you go and eat out all the time, pay $20-25 on an eggs on toast, and your eggs fried on the worst possible oil at a cafe because they are trying to make a living? If you could do that at home for a fraction of the price, for $2-3, it's going to be much quicker as well. People talk about time, but they have time to call Uber Eats. They have time to check the menu. They have time to go into the takeaway shop. Why not use that time at your home, like cooking for yourself, knowing what's in your plate, and actually connecting with the food? And once you know how to do things, it's like running, or swimming. Like we were talking about swimming the other day. And for me now to go and jump on the pool here in Austinville and go for a swim, it's something that is very far because I'm not used to doing that. I don't dominate that skill. It's something I don't know how to do it properly. But if I knew how to do it properly, if I practice, then it's going to be much easier. Same with jiu-jitsu or with surfing, like for someone to go into the ocean and paddle through the waves and get to the back end to catch a wave. If you don't know how to do it, it's going to be much harder and it's going to take longer. But if you keep doing, if you build the discipline to do it all the time, it's just going to become easier and seamless, and it's going to be effortless once you practice enough to become a part of your daily life.
Yeah, it's really about building the habits. And I think, as you say, one thing that's interesting is I actually at home have a huge collection of recipe books, but I rarely cook from them. Every now and then you kind of look at them and you almost just get some ideas that I don't cook from, but they just kind of sit in your head. But because I have over years developed some of those foundational basics. But thank you so much, Lucas. It's really, I always find talking to you fantastic, because you do keep things really, really practical, and break things down to the simplest skills that everyone can start and to follow. Plus you bring that sense of fun and enjoyment into the kitchen. And it's really obvious that you really enjoy food and enjoy the produce as well. And I think that that's something that is infectious, and that athletes as well can really learn from and appreciate, and start to bring some of those skills as well into their own health and performance journeys. So thank you so much for joining me.
No, thanks for having me, Pip. I really appreciate, you always supported us through all our crazy ventures. And I really appreciate that you got him into here.
Thanks, Lucas.
All right. See you soon, Pip.